And so we'll see how they're going to react. The president has issued a statement about what's acceptable to him and what's not. And hopefully we'll see some good conduct next week, and I'll be able to go in there and have discussions.
Steve, is the three-phase kind of agreement framework still in place, or did the president's Truth Social kind of up in that?
Well, I would say that the president basically was saying, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think it's fairly clear he was saying, I've had enough. Like, there's a lot of mistreatment. There's a lot of conversation among these hostages about the deprivation that they went through, about murders that they saw. And I think that the president listened to it, absorbed it, and said, it's unacceptable. I'm not going to tolerate this type of behavior.
So what does that mean for phase 2 negotiations?
I don't think I don't think, as the president has said before, I don't think you alert everybody how you're going to negotiate or what your reaction's going to be.
Steve.
But I wouldn't test President Trump.
Steve,
Steve, what do the United States now negotiate with
Steve, what is the bottom line? What happens when? And what's the bottom line for President Trump? And what happens? Does the U.S. authorize someone to take action, or does the U.S. take action?
Well, I think it's unclear exactly what's going to happen. I think there's going to be some action taken. It could be jointly with the Israelis. It's unclear right now, but I think Hamas has an opportunity to act reasonably, to do what's right, and then to walk out. They're not going to be a part of a government there. Everybody understands that, and that is implicit in the May 27th protocol agreement pursuant to which these negotiations are happening. So I think they have to understand that, and if they understand that, then they get a path to leave.
Including military action?
I don't.
Mr. Witkoff, a lot of hostage families in Israel are concerned that if the focus changes to only American hostages, that will leave Israeli hostages, non-Americans behind. What can you say to them? And also, regarding the negotiations, would going back to military options in Gaza, is that something that is on the table, even though it can put hostages at risk?
So I would say to you, Yuna, that yesterday there were 2 American hostages in the room and there were 7 other Israelis. So lives matter to the Trump administration. All lives matter to him. And he was focused on all lives. So
when is the team to negotiate?
The negotiations with Hamas, exactly how long are going? And about destruction of Gaza. Finally, Ukraine. Is the president satisfied with the outreach from President Zelensky?
So I have not met with Hamas, but my understanding is that any discussions with Hamas have been recent. Not 3 weeks has been reported, but a couple of days, and that's well within the ambit of the special envoy. In fact, that's his job. His job is to get these people home. We help in that effort, so I commend him for doing that. Adam cares about lives, as everybody should be, and the hostage families are, I think, grateful for it, and so is President Trump.
You said there was a framework on Tuesday for Ukraine. Will the minerals deal be signed then on Tuesday?
Well, I think Zelensky has offered to sign it, and we'll see if he follows through.
Steve, can I follow up? Steve,
negotiate directly with
Mr. Witkoff, can I ask about, yesterday the hostages came and they met President Trump. President Trump yesterday posted writing, Shalom Hamas, hello and goodbye. And what does it mean exactly? And can you tell us, how did you feel yesterday with the hostages at the Oval Office? It was such an amazing meeting. You heard their stories. You really asked them to tell their stories. And can you tell us if you think that you'd like to go through with the second phase of the deal?
I think he felt the awesome responsibility of this office. And I think he listened to 9 human beings who had been held in captivity in some really difficult circumstances say to him, thank God for you. Thank God for your election. Thank God, because each and every one of them, to a person, not scripted, said, but for him, they would not be there today. And they were grateful for their families. And in the Jewish religion, save a life, you save 1,000 lives. The president was there listening to 9 people say that each of them viewed their lives as being saved by him. They talked about how they heard about his election, and they were uplifted. They were in these dark, dank caverns, 200 feet below the surface of the earth, never having any hope. And when they heard he was elected, they were ebullient. They had never felt like they were elated, waiting for him, because they knew he was going to help them get rescued. So it was a really emotional experience for him and for me and everybody who was in that Oval Office yesterday. Caroline was there too, and you can ask her. It was deeply moving yesterday.
Will there be a phase two? Will there be a phase two?
What about the phase 2 of the deal?
Well, I think that's the discussion. The discussion today, whether look, people define it as an extension of phase 1 or phase 2. For me, I don't really care what we call it. What we call it is, are we going to have a resolution? Are we going to have a peace deal? Are we going to get all of those hostages home, which is the aim of the Trump administration? And that's going to require some good, reasonable, humanitarian action on the part of Hamas. And it's time for them, I think, to gain some political capital and show that they're capable of doing that.
So will Israel have to end the war? Will Israel have to withdraw?
Is there a deadline for the talks? Is there a date with which you say, if we don't make any progress after that date, then we go back fighting?
I think there definitely is such a date, but I'm not at liberty to discuss what that is.
Steve, what do you mean by joint Israeli actions? Can you describe
Well,
that?
we're a guarantor of the process, right? It's the Israelis who control Gaza today, and it's the Israelis, and the counterparty is Hamas. And so I think any action really principally comes from the Israelis. But you heard the president say yesterday he's giving the Israelis anything they need. So it's the Israelis, but with very, very strong physical and emotional support from the United States.
Steve, can I ask?
I don't mean to.
Can I ask you about the meeting with the Ukrainians next week? Is there anything specific they can bring to the table there that would allow a resumption of the military aid and the sharing of intelligence?
Well, I think those are all decisions of the president, but I think he felt that Zelensky's letter was a very positive first step. There was an apology. There was an acknowledgement that the United States has done so much for the country of Ukraine, and a sense of gratitude. I think that's the biggest deal, right? Like, we've supported that country, and I think it's important when you support somebody that that person comes back and acknowledges that and says, you know, how is it that we should be? It's not just some sort of unilateral way of processing
So
these
it's
things.
possible that could all be resumed after the meeting?
Well, I think we're going there to meet, presumably. I think it'll be a good meeting. I really do believe that. Hopefully that'll be a good signal to the Russians, because they have been proactive, too, in wanting to get something done here. And I think that's what the president, that's who he is. He's a peace through strength president. The best wars are the wars that never have to get fought. And so if we can solve this and not fight anymore and save lives, that's the aim of President Trump.
When
Sir,
is
the
the
last question, go ahead.
Does the U.S. approve of U.S. allies continuing to share U.S. intelligence with Ukraine?
Well, I read this morning that that there might be a suspension of it. So I'm really not sure about that. I'm not sure where we are with John Radcliffe and the DNI. But I would think at some point, hopefully we get things back on track with the Ukrainians and everything resumes. That's what I would hope for.
So the United States now negotiate with any group that takes American hostages?
So we heard from the ministry and Russia, and they are waiting for the U.S. team to be named. Do we have a timeline and when that could happen, and who will be involved in that process?
We've been in discussions with the National Security Advisor this morning about who that named team will be. We've reached out to the Russians. We'll let the Ukrainians know as well, and so before we get there, that'll all be a part of it.
So will the U.S. now engage with any terrorist group that takes American hostages?
Well, I think if you're asking about the reach out that you read about, I think it was the responsibility of the special envoy to actually have conversation and see if anything can be achieved. Unfortunately, what we learned is that Hamas told us they were going to be thinking about it a certain way, and they weren't. So I think that's important information for us to have, and so came the tweet from the president, which is, your behavior is unacceptable. You need to clean up your behavior, and that's where we stand as a government.
Is there no concern that the direct engagement could encourage
I don't know whether it was a direct engagement or not. It could have been through a go-between. I just know that the messaging was, we want to see these hostages come home. We're not going to sit here, do nothing, and tolerate these kind of inhumane conditions. They've lived in a terrible situation. By the way, who keeps dead bodies? Who does that? Who keeps people chained up downstairs? Who murders in front of other hostages? What's happened here is intolerable, and it's not going to be tolerated by President Trump.
Steve, can I clarify your last answer? Are you saying that what's been paused is just U.S. intelligence direct to Ukraine, or that there was also a pause on the allies sharing intelligence?
I was simply saying, Jackie, that I can't comment on specifically what was paused.
And
does the president see any difference?
Vice President Emmanuel Macron has floated a one-month pause on long-range strikes in Ukraine and Russia. Do you think this is something that Russia would accept?
We're talking to the French. I can't tell you what specific proposals have been put on the table.
Will President Zelensky be allowed back or be invited back to the White House?
I think that the president has said that there's a path back, and President Zelensky has demonstrated that he's intent on that good faith path back. He's apologized. He said he's grateful. He said that he wants to work towards peace. By the way, that's ultimately the goal here. President Trump is an outcome-oriented man. He wants a good outcome, and a good outcome is peace, no more death, and a better world.
Does the president see any difference between the
ceasefire and hostage deal that the previous administration put together in terms of the framework? You said it wasn't such a wonderful deal. Can you just confirm, without going into those details, that you're still working off of that framework, or are you negotiating that as well?
Well, the May 27th protocol is the framework. That's what that whole deal was predicated based on that May 27th framework. And what I said was that deal presumed that it would take 5 years to reconstruct Gaza. And so the Saudis, when they talked about normalization, were working on a 5-year program. Gazans, thinking about coming back, thought that they would go back to their homes in 5 years. And I simply am saying that that's a delusion, and that we need to level set the facts so that people can make proper decisions based on the realities. Now, you saw a Wall Street Journal article about 10 days ago that said it's 15 to 20 years. So they're finally beginning to agree that people don't belong back there. It's a really dangerous environment for children, for anybody. Unexploded munitions, all kinds of latent ways to get hurt there. So we're level setting the facts. We understand what the conditions are, and we're going to make proper decisions, master planning, so forth and so on, for every stakeholder's benefit, with a lot of input based on the realities.
Does the president see any difference between, or different priorities between returning the American hostages and the others from Gaza?
I think the president cares about all lives. That's what he cares about.
So he wants to let them out together, all of them?
I mean, of course, an American is going to be a priority for him. And by the way, in Edon Alexander's case, this young man was injured. And that's part of it, too, part of the calculus. We know, okay, that he's living in extreme circumstances. And so, but I think the president cares equally about Israelis as he would about a Russian captive, as he would about somebody from the Philippines. We've gotten releases across the board because the president cares about saving lives. And he's just a good human being who and he knows he has the power to generate this type of thing.
Is there any discussion, Steve, about making defensive weapons available to Ukraine? The civilian populations in Ukraine left vulnerable because of missile strikes by Russia, by drone strikes into Russia. Is that a concern to the president?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
The question simply is about making defensive weapons available to Ukraine. I realize there's a pause right now, but defensive weapons can protect civilian populations.
Well, we've been giving them plenty, but I think the larger discussion for us is to get a peace deal done. We want to see peace. We want to see peace in the Middle East. Well, I should say the president wants to see peace, and we follow our commander-in-chief. We want to see peace in the Middle East. We want to see it in Ukraine. We want to see it all over the world.